Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Maristani, and today I have an excellent guest here with me, Mr. Noah Norton. And I just want to give you guys a quick background if you haven't heard from me before. I'm a dual board certified internal medicine doctor and a functional medicine doctor certified through the IFM certification program which is vetted through the Cleveland Clinic. And what we strive to do is find underlying causes for disease. And I want Noah to tell a little bit about who he is, but all I can say is he's an incredible golfer, a pro golfer. And his story is amazing because he was one of the best in the world under 18 years old. And then, unfortunately, once he turned pro, and I'll let him give more detail, he got struck with a disease that no one could figure out that was from COVID, we think. And now he's doing much better and he's kicking butt. And I want to give a little bit of a background to what we did, how we figured this out, and then how we treated it and how we really had to use unconventional methods because he went to some of the best people in the world and couldn't get answers. So I'll let Noah give a little backdrop. Thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate you taking out your time. I know you're probably practicing and trying to go, Corn Ferry into the PGA. I know it's crazy busy. You're hanging out with some of the best golfers in the world, but tell us a little bit about what happened to you and give us a backdrop about how you became such a great golfer too.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, of course. Anything to help because you've done so much for me already. But as for me, I grew up in Northern California. I started playing really young, and it was kind of a small. I wasn't in the Bay Area or anything big where there were a bunch of players. I grew up in Chico, California, and I started traveling more and getting outside the state when I was about 14, and I started to really blow up my senior year. I started playing very well, and that was kind of what you were mentioning. By the end, when I went to school, I was the number two player in the world and number one in my class, and I played some really good golf going in, and was really excited for college. And when I went to Georgia Tech, and went out there, spent 4 years there, which was amazing. It's where I still am now. I've stayed in Atlanta after all this time.
Great school. Yeah.
Yep.
Great city. Yeah.
And it had such a long history of good golfers. So
Mhm.
couldn't wait to be out there. And
Sure.
my 4 years there were really great. We had a really good team. Our team never really dropped outside the top five in the rankings. We were always about two or three. It helped. I had some good teammates, obviously. But I played all 4 years and had some good events. I played the U.S. Open in 2019.
Right.
That one was pretty cool. It was in at Pebble Beach, so Northern
Wait,
Cal.
so hold on. Pebble Beach, 2019. How old were you?
I was 20, just turned
Oh,
20.
so how was that? Was that incredible? Was that an insane
That
experience?
was amazing because it was in Northern Cal. There were so many people from my hometown that drove down. It was pretty
Oh,
special.
that's
So it was
completely
amazing.
insane.
It was amazing. So great
Hey,
experience.
the
I
next time you
played
do that, I really want a ticket to Pebble. I want to be there. I would love to watch you Pebble Beach. That'd be insane.
absolutely. It's back there in 2032. So hopefully, or 2027 and 2032. So hopefully
Okay.
both of those.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
So, but yeah, so I did that. I was on the all freshman team. Won a couple amateur events here and there, but uh, kind of fast forwarding through that, I had a somewhat solid college career. I obviously expected more, but I started having injury issues towards the end of that, and then I turned pro in fall of 21, which is right. I graduated in spring, and I played two events, which were the stages at Q School, first and second stage. And I got injured at second stage. I ended up having to get surgery on my knee, meniscus, minor surgery, um, which took me out for 6 months. And when I returned to golf, I played two events, and that's when everything kind of hit me all at once. So that was in the summer of 22. I got COVID, and that's when we started to have some issues.
so let me ask you a question. How much did you weigh at your peak when you were pro? What was your height and weight?
So when I was pro, I beefed up a little bit. I was about 205 pounds at 6 feet tall.
Okay, good. So a good fighting weight, actually
Yeah.
bigger than most golfers by far.
Yeah,
And
much
how
bigger.
much, I hate to ask this, but I love this. How much could you drive back then? What was your driving ability? Carry it.
I actually carried it about 305 to 310.
Jesus, that's insane. So I carry 250, so I'm jealous, my friend. And I weigh 205, 210 pounds too. And I'm 6'1". So we're kind of the same height, but you're a little bit better than me, a little bit faster.
Not by much.
But yeah, of course. But so you were killing it, okay. And then you got COVID in 22. Okay.
Mhm.
And then what happened?
So I got COVID in 22. And when I was trying to return to golf, I started having issues getting food down. And that was towards the end of summer, August, September. It started to get really bad. That's when I started losing a little bit of weight. So I dropped down to about 185-ish, which at that time, I was like, hey, I'm leaning out. It was like an accidental cut, basically, was the joke.
Yeah.
And I wasn't that worried about it at first. And then fast forward a couple months, still struggling. November, I sorry, I got a call.
Yeah, no
I
problem.
just I'm back. Starting November, I had some like nerve issues, some like severe pain in my shoulder specifically, and I struggled getting food down. I struggled sleeping through it. So about 6 days, and the food obviously started to snowball because of it. And I started losing weight pretty rapidly at that point. That was when I was first hospitalized because I hadn't slept. I couldn't eat, and I was having some really bad, severe issues. So went to the hospital. They gave me some pain medication so I could actually sleep. And um, at that point, I had lost like 30 pounds in the last like 4 weeks, I think it was.
30
So
pounds
I
from
was
185 or
from
total?
185. So then I was down to 155.
Oh,
And then we're like, okay, this is not good.
yeah. And
And
can you subscribe to the audience like because you had basically what we understand now is you had severe food allergies, severe
Mhm.
after COVID. I mean, COVID obviously ramped up, and this is the problem with COVID, and we're seeing this a lot. Like, for example, the prevalence of post-COVID celiac disease is significantly higher than pre-COVID. So basically, COVID, because it's so immunostimulatory, it stimulates your immune system and it then your immune system gets dysregulated and now you're attacking all these things that you used to not have a problem with like what dairy or gluten, right? Like I mean, what was causing your main issues?
I really struggled. The first thing I struggled with was meat. I could not get any protein sources down, and that was a huge worry, obviously, as an athlete.
Yeah.
And then, I was eating bread, but I still wasn't getting any better. Honestly, it was pretty much any food I was having problems with. I couldn't even really get, like, water was upsetting it for some reason, which I still don't really understand, to be honest with you. But anything that I put in my stomach had a reaction. So, um, yeah, it was horrible. I mean,
Well, they say that if you have, like, for example, and this is an extreme immune issue called mast cell hypersensitivity syndrome, once your mast cells, which are the cells that release histamine, are primed, you could drink a glass of water and it releases this immune blast of chemicals, and all of a sudden you're feeling terrible and you're bloating and you have esophageal pain, stomach pain, ulcers, irritable bowel syndrome, diarrhea. I mean, it can be so bad. And without having to get into details, you obviously had an extreme case because you couldn't even eat food
yeah.
and you lost a lot of weight. And then I think you went to Stanford. You went to great physicians, right?
Yeah, so we started with just gastroenterologists in the area.
Yep.
We saw a couple,
Yep.
and started with like PPIs and all different sorts of medications, trying to fix it. And unfortunately, with all of them, there's always a trial and error period, and you kind of have to go through everything. And
Yep.
went to some big institutions, as you mentioned, like went up to Minnesota and in December, and then went to Stanford later that year, and saw a lot of big doctors. We were lucky to get in, and um,
So you went to
they,
Mayo,
yeah,
Stanford, local
yeah,
physicians, and then one of my colleagues, who's from John Hopkins, basically calls me because I think you called his office, or I don't know how you guys knew each other, but
yeah,
he then says, "Hey, can you look at this guy? No one can figure him out." And
yeah,
my job in the functional medicine certification we have is we typically see patients that have already seen like 5 or 6 doctors, and there's literally no answer, or it's kind of like an immune issue, like this was, or a food allergy issue. So we obviously said, sure, we'll take a look at Noah, and and then we started working together. I think in 23,
Yeah,
maybe 23.
January or first week of February or last week of January 23. So
Yeah,
I spent like the next 6 weeks after November,
yeah,
uh, basically in waiting rooms.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and that first month of January of 23 was the first time I was able to like get out. And so then we came down to see you in Naples, which was unbelievable. And also, you guys have the best weather there in the winter I've never seen in South Florida,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I am jealous.
yeah.
So we went down there, and that was honestly when I first started to improve at all, was when we started, adding supplements and doing blood work and doing the test to see, what was actually going on. It was the first time we had some answers with the low pancreatic enzymes and I'm trying to think of the other big one.
All the food allergies, the dysbiosis, the
Yes,
probiotics.
yes,
So
yes.
what happens is traditional doctors, they do a great job at 90% of stuff. 90% of cases they can figure out. But then you're like in that 5 or 10% that where people like, what's going on, right? Because what they do is they do IgE food allergy testing. That
Hmm.
means are you like, do you have a life-threatening allergy to like, shellfish or lobster or peanuts? But your testing was, I think, pretty normal. But then I did an IgG, which is not standard of care, but it's a different antibody, which is not life-threatening, but it means, hey, listen, if you have a ton of IgG in your bloodstream to gluten or dairy, every time you eat gluten or dairy, you got 26 feet of intestine that's going to pass through, and your antibody is going to hit and attack all those pieces as it goes down. So yeah, we did that, and you were allergic to everything. I mean, you were allergic to like, I mean, you're. Can you describe the crazy restriction diet you were on? Because you were literally, I remember one point, you literally, I don't know, you ate like 2 things. But it worked. But what were the two? What were a couple things you were actually eating? You remember?
So yeah, it was well when I was really sick, well the funny part is my mom's a nurse. That's what happened why it was such a restricted diet. My mom was a nurse, so she
Was on it.
yeah, so she was on me immediately. Well, she showed up when I was in the hospital and I was eating saltine crackers only.
Yeah,
Because it was the only thing that I could eat. And when you're sick as a kid, you eat saltine crackers.
sure.
So um, obviously, when she came to town, I was eating. I got to think back to what I was actually eating at that time because I tried so many things in the diet until I finally gotten to where I am now. But at the time, I was eating like rice. Rice was like the majority of the diet because I was only eating about 1,000 calories and. Um, I wish I could remember
Well,
exactly.
how about this? What are the foods that you can eat now?
The foods I can eat now are still really restricted.
Exactly.
So, grain rice is still there, thank God.
Yeah, yeah.
Good old and steady. Oatmeal. I finally am getting chicken down.
Thank God.
That's yeah, that is a big one for us. I'm still on a lot of plant-based stuff because that stuff is the
Plant-based
lower
protein.
on the
Yeah, pea protein's incredible.
yeah. So pea protein, lower inflammatory stuff, anti-inflammatory
By
stuff.
the way, I just want to mention I tried this Orgain because I love Tom Brady TB12, but
Yeah.
Orgain has a new one that tastes like a Wendy's Frosty. Dude, it's a chocolate peanut butter. I just tried it for the first time. I was like, oh my God, this tastes like a Wendy's Frosty. And it
I
was,
used to love Orgain. That's
dude,
what I used to drink
yeah.
every
Yeah, it
day.
was I'm just saying there's so many good pea protein flavors finally. They used to all be very terrible.
Mhm.
But yeah, pea protein is the most hypoallergenic pea protein there is. So whenever anyone has any GI issues, I'm just like, dude, take pea protein. But
Right.
anyway, sorry, keep going. You have pea
Yes,
protein, chicken,
so pea
rice.
protein has been amazing. The big difference maker. So we're fast forwarding a little bit, but once I was getting better, um, we started straining. I was getting soy down, which is something that some people struggle with, but I could get it down, and we strained soy milk, so we condensed it to make it have uh,
More
good bacteria for the gut,
the
and it had
probiotic.
higher protein.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that was a game changer. That was what I started gaining weight off of that. And so, but the diet then was much more restricted. I remember like I was just like drinking honey. I was just trying to get some
yeah.
calories down. I was just like
I remember
sipping
when I
on the
first
honey.
met you and you were 135 pounds, 6'1", going, oh my God, this guy used to be 200, top player in the world.
Yeah.
What do we do for this guy? And so we basically, for the first time, we hit you with, and people go, oh, I don't believe in supplements. And then you hear stories like this. Well, I cure people constantly with the right supplements, like fish oil, probiotics, prebiotics, and boost the immune system and help them methylate, help them detox. So we hit you with supplements, things like low dose naltrexone, things that calm down the immune system,
Yes.
knowing it was immune mediated long COVID, because everything else had been rolled out. This guy literally had every test on the planet. So I said, okay, it has to be this. So we tried it and we did proprietary protocols for long COVID to boost the immune system, blah, 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 blah. And you gained a little bit of weight, right? You gained, and then we did hyperbaric. And hyperbaric was
Yes.
probably one of the best things we did. And the reason hyperbaric, just so that everyone understands, hyperbaric oxygen therapy is a chamber that you get in, they seal it, and there's airflow inside the whole time. It's glass chamber, so you're not claustrophobic. And they pressurize it so you're like 30 feet or 40 feet underwater. And that gives you about 10 times the ambient oxygen that you normally breathe when you're walking around at sea level. With that 10 times higher oxygen, it forces stem cells to regenerate tissue in your body. That's why we use it for like third-degree burns. We use it for diabetic foot ulcers. And if you think about a diabetic foot ulcer has literally no blood flow because diabetics have destroyed their microcapillaries, and that wound will literally fester and smell and rot. And that's why in the past we used to cut off people's legs. But now, if you take a diabetic foot ulcer, you throw them in a hyperbaric chamber after 30 or 40 treatments, it forces the stem cells to go to the surface and regrow blood vessels and regrow skin. So just like we use that mentality, like, well, with Noah, we have no idea how to fix him right now. We tried everything. Let's just throw a hyperbaric in, at least as a temporary solution. And you experienced it, right? So sure enough, unfortunately, it was only temporary. But what happened when you did it?
So, so after we met in January, I started getting energy back, and the supplements helped with that. But the weight didn't really return yet. We did some hormone stuff as well, which was huge. And then we started hyperbaric. I think we as an experiment. I think you kind of just suggested like it can't hurt to try, and that's obviously in what whenever you have health issues, that's kind of music to your ears because low hanging fruit stuff that has low risk
Yep.
is the key.
Yep.
Everything they give you medication, there's like 50 drawbacks. There's side effects that cause other issues. So
Yep.
hyperbaric. Can't hurt to try. So we tried some nearby, but they weren't as the same machines. They were, we had to find a hard shell, which was tough to find. Um, so the atmospheric level was 2.2 instead of the 1.0 that you get with soft shell.
Yep.
And, but it still, I think, was not as the same caliber as like there was one, but compared to the machines you had, it wasn't the same. So I tried it out and I did get better right away. I started being what we first noticed was calorie count. So I could never get more than 1,500 calories in a day. I typically sat at about 1,000.
Mhm.
And so I was just constantly depleted, but my stomach just shrank and I was just getting smaller and smaller. So um, once we first did that, that was the first time I cleared 2,000. And
Awesome.
that was a big day.
Oh yeah.
And I was so excited. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think, oh, I was
How many
getting,
sessions in? How many
at
sessions
that,
in? How many sessions in did you start to
so
notice?
10. So
10.
that was 10
Yeah.
was the number. And
You did them back to
I
back?
remember that was when I first got Kachava down. That was the protein
Oh
powder I
yeah.
started out
That's
with.
another good one. Yeah, yeah.
And so I started gaining a little bit of weight. And so then we did another 10 sessions
Yep.
and I gained a little bit more. So at this time I was probably up 10, maybe 15 pounds, probably 10-ish.
That's awesome.
And so, which was really exciting. And then you're like, look, those machines are great, but you should come down here and do the machines that we have here. I don't really know. I'll let you explain the difference. But
Sure, yeah, yeah.
I did 20 sessions down there for a month and I ended up getting up to 160. So I was up 25
Woo!
pounds
That's
over
massive.
2 months, which was
Amazing.
awesome. And I
Amazing.
was full energy. I was in the gym every day,
Yep.
uh, loving life. That was a pretty big high because I was low for a full year at that point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
but those machines, I just liked them because they were see through. I could catch up
Yeah.
on my TV shows.
So there's a lot of different hyperbaric chambers out there. There's soft shell chambers that are like 1.3 atmospheres, 1.4 atmospheres, but they're not 100% oxygen. They'll give you sometimes nasal cannula with an oxygen concentrator, which is good, but you're only still getting like 93, sorry, maybe 85% oxygen with nasal cannula, sometimes less depending on how much airflow you have. And then on top of that, you're only pressurized to 1.4. But we had the big, Mac Daddy, we had the Secrets chambers, which were, $250,000 piece, right? And those guys will get you down to, 40 feet underwater with 100% oxygen. And our system was, we were very well maintained. We had techs out there every 3 months. I mean, we were super careful with our setup. We had, certified respiratory technicians running it. We had like a
Mhm.
legit system. And we, got it from Dr. David Perlmutter's office, where he was a neurologist, and he would use this to treat things like, neurological conditions. And the thing that people don't realize is a hyperbaric, if you get into a deep chamber, that's, for example, if you had a third-degree burn or diabetic foot ulcer, you would have to have one of those legit chambers to heal it. You couldn't do it in a soft chamber. Now, soft chambers do have therapies like for traumatic brain injury. They do have evidence they do work. But to like stimulate your stem cells to such an extent that we can heal your intestines or heal your wound, or that's what I was trying to do. I was like, oh man, we got to overpower, because there's a degenerative process going on, and then there's a regenerative process, the stem cells. I had to overpower the regenerative process by forcing the oxygen to the stem cells. And it was also kind of like a sample, because I knew that if this helped, then maybe you would need actual stem cells, right? And that's kind of what the segue was. So we did this as an experiment. It proved hyperbaric does two things: stimulates stem cells, which heals; two, it turns off inflammation. And that's what you needed, right? And I said,
Mhm.
well, how do we do this to even a more, powerful degree? And that's where we started talking about stem cells. Because then I said, look, one of my colleagues, the one who referred you to me, actually, I'm going to refer you back to him. He would train at John Hopkins, Harvard, Stanford, or sorry, John Hopkins, Harvard, Princeton. Super smart guy. And he does stem cells in Antigua. And that's where you went, right? When did you get stem cells?
So I got stem cells a couple months after. So what happened was exactly what you said. You and him were working in tandem, uh, kind of discussing the fact that I did get better, and we stopped that in, I believe it was either end of August or middle of September-ish. And by the end of October, I was losing weight again, and everything. We were kind of waiting because we had to get a CAT scan to make sure it wasn't anything more serious. Because obviously, if you get stem cell with cancer or something, then it tends to grow those as
Yep.
well.
We want to make
So
sure you don't have cancer. Yeah, yeah.
yes, so we had to rule that out and do some more tests to make sure for sure, and or make sure that I didn't have that. And um, so we waited till January, and by that time I had lost all the weight and then some. I was down to 125.9. I remember the day the scale said that.
Jeez,
Um,
that's so crazy. At 6'4",
yeah, yeah,
125
yeah,
pounds. Oh my.
yeah. So
Yeah.
um, that was full 80 pounds weight loss, and I was really struggling at that point too. Everything had just regressed pretty drastically. And so we honestly were debating between doing, I think we had talked about maybe even a plasma exchange or that, and we elected to just go do stem cell.
Yeah. Because you know what? And this is why I love what I do, right? Because man, we look at a guy like you, one of the best golfers literally in the world, under 18 years old, and we're looking at him and like he just played the pros. He's about to get massive, okay? And you're sitting here playing with some like you've told me names. I don't know if you can say them, but you play with some incredible athletes, people that are incredible right now, some of the top ranked golfers in the world. And I'm thinking, how do we get this guy back? Because he is going to be upset the rest of his life if we can't fix this, right? That's going to be such a regret.
Mhm,
And that's
mhm.
when I call some of my think tank guys that are the best in the world, best and brightest. I said, hey, is this going to hurt him? And I remember the company that you got treated with, okay, stem cells you got treated with. I reached out to CEO and I said, hey, what's the safety data? And they had overdone, I think, 900 United cases in the U.S. FDA approved. It's a U.S. company out of Colorado. Everything was legit, buttoned up, studied. 980 something cases, not one adverse event. And then they had looked, and the guy from John Hopkins, my colleague, looked at all the other studies in the world and said, hey, man, this is all safe as long as you have a quality control company. So then basically you flew to Antigua and you got, it was like 100 million stem cells, something like that.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know the exact number. I got confused.
It was at least 100 million for sure.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
I think it was a lot,
And it
but
was
it
just IV,
was
right? Just IV.
just IV. That, yeah. And so we flew down there. It was just a little quick trip, and um,
Beautiful island, beautiful hotel,
yeah, I was gonna say, I was just thinking
beautiful
about,
results.
yeah, yeah, both. It was amazing. The trip, I mean, obviously, was an
Triple
A
threat.
plus.
Yeah.
Never been down there, and not a bad spot by any means if you guys go
Oh
down
yeah.
there.
Oh
But
yeah.
came back, and honestly, the results were really fast. Because that was my most severe. symptoms. Like I had gotten worse before, but I was still able to eat some food. At this time, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was eating a half a cup of rice a day, and I was drinking shot water out of shot glasses just because he was worried about my kidneys not working, which I tough experience. That was about 2 weeks of that before we just winged it and flew immediately because we were really worried about it. And went down there. I came back and
Well, what date
after,
was that when you get stem cells approximately?
I think it was January.
24 maybe.
It was January 24th. It was like
Yeah.
middle of January.
So
So it
about
was like
a year and a half ago.
a year and a half ago now. Yeah.
I'm flying.
So I came back and it was about a week and I was eating again. I was steadily increasing. I had to start really slow, of course.
How many calories
But
were you at the worst per day?
the weight,
No, how many calories per day were you eating at the worst?
I mean, it was
600?
I think a cup of rice is 200. I was less, I was that. I was
Jeez.
just barely eating. I
Wow.
was starving, literally.
Wow. Isn't
So
that scary? It's like
I,
anorexia from food allergies from COVID.
yeah, it was,
Jesus. Yeah,
it was
that's
bizarre.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of good friends here, and well, that sounds kind of strange, but you never really expect to lean on someone so much.
Totally.
But we talk about there's always a community of golfers wherever guys turn pros. There's always groups, and they play together, and all these guys have their own lives and they're busy and they're traveling a lot, but I leaned on them more than I've ever had to lean on anybody. My parents, these guys, and you know, they were great in a lot of ways, but they talk about that still sometimes. They just can't believe it because I mean, I looked like a stick figure.
Yeah.
So,
You
so
were on an extreme diet program.
yeah,
I know that's why there's no I in team, man. When you get a group of guys that's golfing together, it's so much more than just a golf team, right?
yeah.
It becomes like women have a lot of these support groups. Men don't have that many. So like men do need to do these sports. Men need to get involved in these things. It's so crucial when things go down. Like you need that support structure, you know? And I
Hmm.
think that's awesome. And so you saying in 2 weeks you start gaining weight. Um,
Yes.
how long did it take you? I mean, you're I mean, you're 200 pounds now, right? You're rocking it right now, right?
Yeah, yeah. Now I'm about 100. I'm actually 185-ish. I've leaned back a little bit.
Oh, you
Which
went back. You were at 20. What were
I was
you
at 195 about
195.
a
Yeah.
month and a half ago. Yeah, so at my max I was 195, and I kind of for the first time in the last couple of years, I was like, you know what? I could lose a couple pounds. I'm about to go on the road, and like
Oh
I
man,
just
it must be
bulked up
like
a lot.
PTSD. Like you lose a pound, you're like, oh
I
oh,
was really, that's exactly what happened. I did not want to, I didn't want to cut it all. I was like,
oh
nope, I'm
man.
not doing it.
But at
So,
least you didn't go the opposite direction and get fat, because that's a problem, right? You're
yeah,
working out now, you get fat, right?
that is the pro of the diet, the limited diet at least, is
Yeah, yeah.
it's a little bit harder to get fat like I used to be. But yeah, so I started right after stem cell, going back to that. About a week, I started eating more. About the 2 month window was when I remember the calorie count was 2,800 calories, which was great,
Wow.
and 50 grams of protein. So I was 160 pounds, but I kind of tabled and I was so excited to get better, but then I had stopped getting better. I was wondering, do I go back? What do I do? But then there came the element of kind of what we talked about. We had to introduce, the microbiome was just shredded.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
non-existent. There was no variety in the diet, and so I had to introduce things really slowly, specifically prebiotics, probiotics, right?
Yep.
And
And
that's what.
that strained soy milk was genius
Yep.
because that was your prebiotics and probiotics. And then, because well, some of what we do in functional medicine, we do stool analysis. So we did a stool analysis and it said, hey, his pancreas is not really working because, of course, if your gut's on fire, your pancreas is part of your gut. So then your pancreas gets like it's been punched. So it's not exactly releasing as many enzymes as it should, which is a temporary phenomenon. But while that's going on, you got to give the body's pancreatic enzyme to help absorb some of those nutrients. And we gave you a very low dose, not like we gave you pharmaceutical doses. We gave you a very low over-the-counter
Yeah.
pancreatic enzyme, and then we said, and I said, hey, if you can get probiotics, prebiotics in, which we normally do with pills, but you were doing it even better with food,
Yep.
kefir. You were just so limited. I was like, oh man, what can you tolerate? But the fact that you tolerated that was huge.
Yeah, we tried some things, but they didn't work right away. And then
Yeah.
give credit where credit's due. My mom was the one who said it. She's like, "Look, you're already drinking the milk and protein shakes when you're trying to drink it. So
That's
why don't we just make a yogurt out of it?" So it turned into yogurt, and put a little honey on it. It tastes probably terrible to most people, but to me at the time, I obviously needed it, so it
yeah.
tasted awesome,
Yeah.
and I still do it.
Yeah.
So it's so easy too. So
So
um,
by the way, after stem cells, how long did it take you to go from like what you were 125 to go from like, I don't know, 125 to like 160 to gain like, that much weight, 35 pounds. How long did that take?
That took about 2 months. The first couple
Wow.
pounds, a lot of that was probably water weight and carbs in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, that didn't take long because a lot of that was like the body was dying for it. It's the first time, I wasn't malnourished, and I was actually digesting the food and having normal stool movements and everything. And so getting those first 35 pounds was easy. And then trying to get back to normal size and be able to eat, not be limited on what I eat, and be able to be like, I'm hungry, I want to eat, and can eat as much as I want. So that was the next step. And once we started that, the soy yogurt in May, and or like the end of May, and by the end of July, I was 180.
Nice.
So
It's
it
funny
was.
because if you had gone back to your doctors in Stanford or Mayo, I don't know if you did, and say, hey, by the way, I did stem cells, and this
Yeah.
is what was the best thing, and they would just say, well, it's unproven and we can't recommend it, but that's great.
Hmm.
And that's where like I think it's interesting. We're in an interesting political situation right now where you have RFK, literally 2 weeks ago in the New York Times has an article. He talks about unproven stem cell technology and charlatans, but then he goes on to say that we need to let these stem cells have a place in trials in the US and study them because even though a lot of stem cells are fake in the United States, fake just meaning they're low levels, like amniotic fluid, 30,000, 100,000 stem cells, versus you go outside the country and they give you hundreds of millions because stem cells are manipulated. But because of the FDA rulings, you can't currently do that in the United States. And here you have RFK article 2 weeks ago, okay, literally, in June of 2025, saying that he himself went to Antigua and got stem cells. And it was the best therapy he had ever received for his neurological condition called spasmodic dysphonia, which is why he talks the way he talks. And you know, in that article later, it talked about our friend doctor who also works in Antigua, but it doesn't connect it to. There are two competing agencies that are working in Antigua, so we're not sure which one treated him. But the point is, the fact that RFK, who's the director of HHS, is saying we need to look into these therapies, and I personally benefit from them, and you personally benefit from them. It just makes everyone go, why can't we utilize these tools, and when can we utilize this? And until then, you had to fly out to another country, right? So, but I still think it's just fascinating that of all the things you did, stem cells were by far the most powerful. And it's because stem cells, inherently what you're doing is you're getting stem cells, you're getting 100 million or more from a donated placenta. So a woman gives birth, term pregnancy, then they collect a placenta, and only like 1 in 30 placentas make it. They're very, crazy careful about it. One placenta can give 100,000 doses of 100 million stem cells. That's incredible because they clone those cells in tissue reactors, and they clone them. Then they keep them at cryopreserved -80 degrees. The problem in some of these places like Mexico and other places, I'm not bad mouthing anyone, but some of them lack quality control if they're not FDA regulated. Because if you don't keep those cells exactly -80, or there's any contaminant, a lot of these cells will be contaminated with mycoplasma and other bacterial things. I've heard of patients who went to Mexico, felt great after stem cells, got a bargain, came back 3 months later, they're in wheelchairs because the knees they got injected in are so inflamed from the contaminants months later that they can't even walk. So like you have to be careful where you get stem cells. You have to make sure a U.S. doctor is vetting it, a U.S. organization is vetting it. I think there needs to be regulatory bodies involved because it's a wild, wild west. There's too many random people offering it. We need to have regulations and standards. But you're a perfect example of like when you get a real stem cell infusion, and it's not cheap. I mean, it was what, 20,000, something crazy like that.
The number was high, but
Yeah, but
it's
it's
yeah.
worth it. I mean, for someone like you who's done everything, one $20,000 expense, and now you're sitting a year and a half later, right?
Hmm.
And you're feeling like $1 million. And
hmm
tell us a little about your story now, because I think everyone needs to realize like how well you're doing now. Like you are in where are you in the qualifying process?
Well, I have to start at the bottom of the totem pole now, so that is part of it. But I mean, I have no restrictions physically. I'm able to swing, play,
And how are you
everything.
swinging now? How are you driving now? How are you
I'm actually hitting it further than I did before, which is
stem cell?
wild.
Hey, that's stem cell strength.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of it was, I mean,
Oh,
it's been a long 18 months because I had to kind of build
yeah.
everything from scratch. And,
Oh yeah.
you have to, the nice thing about it was you do get to start from scratch. So some bad habits that you had, you
Oh
get
yeah.
to remember, you obviously knew they were bad habits. So now, you got to start from new.
Yeah.
But, I hit it further now. I'm actually working on reeling it back and hitting it straighter, which again, it's kind of like cutting weight. It's not what I for years I was always trying to hit it further, which so it's a good problem to have. And but physically I'm in the gym every day. The food calorie count, I mean I can eat up to 5,000 calories, no
Wow.
problem.
Wow.
Which
Wow.
unfortunately during the summer you're walking, you're working out so much, you have to eat so much. Just
And most of, by the way, for you, most of the protein you're getting is vegan still, right?
mostly, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
which just
So
shows, Tom Brady is vegan. You
mhm.
can get enough protein to build muscle, and people think, oh, vegan protein is not going to work. Well, actually, it does. There's actually a bunch of bodybuilders that just do vegan protein. So you
Mhm.
just got to do a little bit more, maybe,
Yeah.
So how much protein are you getting on an average day right now? How many grams?
I'm about 200 to 205 grams of protein a day.
Wow. Okay. So I'm
So
having my 50 gram TB12 right now.
I
So
love it.
you're killing it, by the way. Good job.
So
So,
yeah, I have three of those a day basically. Go three TB12s a day. So
but you're doing
and
the other one. Which one are you doing?
I'm doing Truvani.
Truvani.
It's
Exactly.
almost like identical
Exactly.
ingredients, but
Yeah, a little
just
different.
yeah, just a little different.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so I do a lot because obviously it's lower on the essential amino acids that you need for muscle building. It's a little bit
100%.
lower as far as vegan goes, but you eat more, and
You get them. They've done
yeah.
studies. You eat enough of pea protein, you get all the branched chain aminos. You just need a little bit more. So instead of, for example, doing 30 grams of whey protein, you might need 40 of vegan. Well, who cares? Just put a little bit more in. But the point is, man, you're killing it. You're doing great. I'm so happy to hear this. I just want to share with the audience that me and Noah have something in common, right? I also have a GI issue that got way worse with COVID, and the COVID vaccine, the way it hit me. So I got the COVID vaccine, and so I have the celiac gene. I have the highest risk gene for celiac, which means gluten has always been a problem for me. Like if I ate a whole pizza in college, I'd have a GI issue, right? But if I had one slice, no issues. I never had true celiac disease. But I got one of the Moderna Pfizer, I'm sorry, one of the Pfizer vaccines. And about 2 months later, I started the worst reflux of my entire life. I actually thought I had a stomach ulcer. One of my friends, my GI doctor friend, scoped me and said, "Your stomach is fine. You just have gastritis and you have, you're reacting to everything." And it's kind of weird. And then I said, "Oh my God, I think I have celiac." I went completely gluten free instead of 80% gluten free, I went 100% gluten free, and all my symptoms were gone. And then I said, oh man, this is tough because if I had soy sauce at a restaurant, I'd be sick for 5 days because of the gluten in the soy sauce. Even in a salad dressing, it was like my life was miserable. And a lot of this is happening after the Pfizer vaccine and or any of the vaccines, or just after COVID itself. Because if you get spike protein, you pick your poison from the vaccine or the virus itself. And by the way, I've had stem cells 7 times. Okay, 7 IV infusions. You've only had one. I've had them 7 times because for me, it was lasting about 6 months. And then I'd feel the symptoms. I'd call my colleagues, say, hey, I'm flying Antigua. Let's get some stem cells. And bam, I'd feel great for 6 months. And so I think it's an incredible technology. We still need to study it more, understand it more. But it is like absolutely insane for people like us because my life is normal. Like I go to, I have soy sauce and I don't react anymore. But at the 6 to 8 month mark, I need it again, right? So I need it again. So I think the goal is to make it more affordable and based on volume, be able to give it to more people because everyone needs this. I feel like everyone in the United States, not everyone, but a lot of people, maybe 20%, 30% have an immune dysregulation issue from all the stuff that we've been hit with, whether it be COVID, all the vaccines, everything. So I think we need to focus on that, and not everyone has this, but when you have it, like, you and me experienced, we're both two young strapping men. I'm 20 years older than you, but we're both healthy and we're both looking physically fit, and then all of a sudden we're just destroyed, right? And so it can take the strongest of people and weaken them. And I'm seeing a lot of young people, a lot of patients that are 19, 20, 21. Worst eczema I've ever seen. GI issues, autoimmune issues, depression, neurological issues, all the stuff that's immune mediated. And this is why we have to push for cleaner foods, cleaner everything, less chemicals, less seed oils, everything that we're talking about here. But I think the stem cells are critical that until we get rid of all this environmental crap, the stem cells at least will normalize your immune system so you don't overreact to everything. So
Mhm.
no, all I'm saying is hopefully you don't ever need stem cells again. Okay. But if you need them, you know where to go. You'll get them.
Yep.
You'll always be available to you. I just wish you the ultimate best. I'm so happy because last time we talked to a couple months ago, you finally started bringing in chicken, which I'm a chicken fan.
Yep.
Everyone is, I think. But eventually, I think you're going to be eating beef. You're going to be, but just hold off to the very end for beef because beef can become, so for some people, more of an issue, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's harder to digest because it's heavier. So I would only tell
Yeah.
you to have beef in the morning, like breakfast or lunch. Never have it at night. Have your lighter meals at night, like protein shakes. But ultimately, man, you're
Yeah.
killing it. I want to see it at the next major event that you have, please. I'll request that for sure. But
Absolutely.
yeah, man, keep enjoying it. Keep doing really good. I think this is going to be very helpful for a lot of people. There are a lot of young people that are in similar situations that don't know what's going on. So I think you're literally helping so many people you have just no idea yet.
Yeah, that's why I do this too. I mean, a lot of times when you're in it, you don't really know what's going on. You're scared, you're
Yeah.
stressed out, and I think, as you said, I mean, the gold standard is finding something like stem cell or things that, have low risk and can only help. And um, controlling what goes in the body, as you said, is so important because there's so many things that people that are thrown into the food that we eat every day and don't think about that cause issues. And those are the two of the easiest things to control and to pay attention to. It's a kind of a pain in the butt, but they make a big difference. So if going on a place and talking about my situation can help anybody, then it's a win. So, I mean, happy to do it.
Sometimes it takes a pro golfer and a doctor to get people to listen. So we'll join forces as much as we have to. But
Yeah.
you're the man, and maybe we'll do a follow-up video a couple years from now, just see how you're
Yeah.
doing, But hopefully you're doing amazing, and we'll be there to support you the whole way through. But thank you again so
Absolutely.
much for your time
Yeah.
and have an awesome a summer. And when it gets really cold, you're welcome to come back to Naples. We got some great courses here, and we'll rock it. Okay.
Absolutely. Sounds
All right.
good.
All right,
All
brother.
right,
Thank you
man.
so much, man. Thank
Of
you.
course.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.